I'll give my esteemed panel members the opportunity to introduce themselves. Should we start with Mahmoud?
Yeah, my pleasure. My name is Mahmoud Tawfik. I'm the founder of Fixed Global Investment Group. We started as a cybersecurity company back in 2007. We specialize in GRC solutions, red teaming, vulnerability assessment, and emerging security and digital technologies. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dajci. I'm a founder of TMSC, CIO Solutions Architect. Also founded a few other decentralized environments for education. And yeah, I'm glad to be here and hopefully we can have a great discussion.
Phil.
Hi everyone, my name is Phil. I'm from Glasgow and I work at JPMorgan Chase in the talent and the employee experience sector. So I spent most of my career as a software engineer, but now I look a lot at technology strategy for the firm and how we can bring our employees along on that journey with us. So looking forward to participating.
Hello everyone, my name is Pedro Fonseca. I'm based in sunny Lisbon. I work for Saint-Gobain, which is a construction manufacturing company, 360 years old, and I'm leading the Cloud Center of Excellence at Saint-Gobain.
Okay, shall we start with an introduction question really about what is cloud infrastructure these days, because that has changed quite a bit over the past few years, and why is it something that organizations should embrace?
So I can go, I can take out that one. So cloud has been around for many years now, I would say more than 20 years old. And cloud really brought a different approach to manage the infrastructure, both from a standard point of view, but also from an operational and standardization approach. And I think that the real value of the cloud is around the standardization approach, the risk management that we can build on it. But it's also something that allows the businesses to understand their impact and the digital impact of their infrastructure, which is something that before it was not really taken into consideration. But right now, for instance, in our cloud environments, we are able to measure the carbon footprint of a specific application, which is something that we were not able to do before. So cloud really brought this digitalization and this scalability to the different businesses, to IT. And yeah, I think that's one of the main things that we came from cloud.
Yeah, just to add, I think what excited JPMorgan Chase employees about the cloud was agility. Previously, I remember years ago ordering servers that would take months to arrive. We would build a new application and it would take a long time to get that provisioned. And we would do software releases every 3 months. So the dream of DevOps became a reality when you have cloud environments and you can do releases of value to customers much more often. So when you're running software on the cloud, being able to have a DevOps culture, intraday deployments, being able to pivot and persevere on different challenges that you might have is something that really was quite exciting for employees at my company. And yeah, we've been involved in cloud for a number of years now and are learning some of the lessons about the importance of cost tracking, the cultural aspects of how to manage infrastructure at scale and so on. But certainly for us, a key thing was the agility that cloud brings you when you do it properly.
So from my side, I'll talk a bit about startups and how cloud actually helped scale young companies that couldn't afford to buy a server. Now you can get a small instance and you can actually run your small company and produce maybe some value to people, right? You have a great idea, but back in, say, when I started IT in 2011, you couldn't afford a server. Minimum cost for a server was £5,000. Someone that started in a startup can't afford to buy 2 servers. A SAN is just impossible for someone to afford at that point. But that's why you see such a boost in the startup industry. You've seen a lot of new founders, a lot of people come and saying, "Oh, look, I'm a founder of AI," because they can afford to do it. Because there's, companies are giving like AWS or Azure, they give you funding, like 10, 20,000 pounds to run your company until you're profitable at some point. So I think that's the most exciting thing. That excites me actually for the younger generation, that they get to do that. I didn't get to do it, but they get to do it. I get to utilize it now. So.
Yeah. From my point of view, cloud is an innovation enabler, especially for startups, because the startup costs are very high for these companies to invest to build up their infrastructures. Early in like 15 years ago, I remember when Cloud Security Alliance began to interfere into this market because there was many challenges regarding privacy, regarding security, regarding segregation, especially in the hypervisor level. So at this time, I think when Cloud Security Alliance interfered in the cloud industry, this enabled many companies to like consume and adopt the cloud in a trusted infrastructure. Thank you.
So maybe we can take a step back and from those benefits that cloud obviously delivers, ask the question or shed some light on the question, what is the main difference to running your own server, running a server in the cloud, running your cloud infrastructure? And does that mean essentially that you don't need the expertise in the organization if you use cloud? A lot of people seem to think, well, if I use cloud, I don't have to think about security anymore because I've offloaded that to whoever provides that cloud service.
They all come with a disadvantage, right? So everyone thinks, oh, well, AI can save the world. Well, in some cases, it can reduce overhead. But with things like Microsoft, what they're doing is they've introduced within their Azure infrastructure, they've introduced Copilot. So actually it does help engineers configure things, find things faster because they offer a vast amount of products. We just talked about Azure at this point. And but companies saying, well, we don't need engineers, that's the wrong thought process because they do actually think that. We don't need an engineer, we're on cloud, we're good, we can do it ourselves. Yes, but have you made it secure? Have you checked like all the updates that are coming in? Is it feasible to have these products run in your infrastructure? Are you compliant with your local regulations? Because 99% of the time, even startups mess this up because they don't understand it. They don't have the right legal teams to guide them or the funding to pay, compliance, for example. So the biggest issue you're facing in today's scenario is people will create companies. But then at the end of the day, once they're a bit mature, you hear them, they're getting fined because they didn't understand that they needed to be compliant at some point. So yes, with clouds, you do need engineers. You do need, especially security engineers. And you do need at the moment, the biggest niche at the moment is AI. They need these guys to guide them towards a sustainable AI within cloud in general.
Yeah. From my point of view, teams are need to be evolving into understanding the cloud infrastructure. Otherwise, it may have negative impact on finances of the company because if you are working in the wrong configuration, then you can be surpassing your limit and getting into financial troubles. In addition to having a weak infrastructure architecture may lead to security compromise because cloud are enabling people, enabling startups to start rapidly. But if you are going to scale, there are many challenges that you have to tackle. Thank you.
So on my end, I don't see it. So right now, I see it more of there's a big standardization that came from cloud, a set of practices that was adopted, like Phil was saying, DevOps, DevSecOps, and so on. And I see it now as an opportunity to apply those to the on-prem world as well. So to bring that efficiency that we've learned that we need to have on the cloud, even for cost reasons or for security reasons, we can bring that efficiency also in that set of practices, that same approach to the on-prem world. And again, there is still and I think with the recent state of the global perspective, good, strong use cases for on-prem infrastructure, for sovereignty reasons, for to manage your own AI and have your own LLMs without relying on any cloud provider. In that sense, that will benefit a lot from having these standard practices that we learn from deploying on the cloud and bring them to the on-prem world.
I think that's an excellent point, is regardless of where you're deploying, these practices should always apply. What I've observed over the last few years is the skills are centralizing and coalescing to the engineers. In the past, you used to be able to have a system administrator who would run your server. You'd have a database expert you could call up if you had an issue with the Oracle or whatever. Now the software engineer is expected to essentially know everything. They have to know the infrastructure, the database technology, how everything's messaged. They have to deploy it. They have to do all the paperwork, everything. So in a sense, that's challenging, but what you tend to find is that engineers will innovate. They start automating things. They start to use DevOps and SRE technology, practices and technologies to make things quicker and repeatable so that they don't have to do manual steps. So that's, I think, something that cloud adoption has accelerated is that skill set shift onto engineers. But what it also has brought is people who were previously in those jobs as database admins or system admins. In our organization, many of them have retrained as software engineers, and they're now in those teams who are building and delivering software at scale. So it's been a cultural and a skill set shift, but you can see that the benefits are there, that people are enjoying their jobs more. They are being able to see the business value of what's being delivered as well. So there's a kind of cultural aspect to cloud adoption as well, I would say.
Now, looking at what's offered for businesses to adopt, there's a huge ecosystem in cloud. And a question I hear very often is, well, what happens if I decide on, say, Azure, something else? Will I buy into that and have to stick with that? Or can I kind of piece together one thing from one provider, something from another provider? Are there any standards that make things work, even if I use different providers?
So, yeah, well, yes, if you want to stay with one provider, that's up to you. But there's something called like multi-tenant. So you actually can have cross-tenant. You can be on GCP, you can be in your AWS, you can be in your Azure. But it all comes at cost, right? You need to have people trained in different environments. Remember, these things are huge environments. One person can't know it all. Yeah, in IT, we are jack of all trades, but when you come to big tool sets like AWS or Azure, there's things that you will not. It's hard to remember. So you need the right training, the right staff in order for you to be cross-platform. That's why I don't know if anyone's seen this shift of people are going more hybrid. It's like we were going too much cloud. Now people are coming back down to be more hybrid, purely because of this reason. They want to have a bit of control to their sensitive information. Because yes, you trust Microsoft because it's protected 99.9% or wherever they say. But then again, you trust yourself more, right? You have more faith in your capabilities. So it's all about capabilities and team capabilities, I think, in this matter, and what the business needs from each environment. It's like you have to look at your needs.
Yeah, adding to my colleague, it starts with the right architecture because there is no one size fits all. So it depends on the industry, the regulations on this industry, and also what are the service requirements, what are the service level requirements, the SLR. Starting from SLR, lead to having an infrastructure with a solid architecture. So in that case, I think the company will be able to tackle the current challenges in the era of AI, because in this era, the manual monitoring will not work anymore. We need AI-powered monitoring and also response. Without that, I think organizations from SME startups or big companies will face critical challenges for compromising their data, whether it's on cloud or in a hybrid model. Thank you.
I think a key thing there is I agree it's architectural design is super important. But what we're not advocating for is a return to the days of waterfall of designing everything up front and that's it. When you're looking at different cloud providers, look at the different strengths that they offer. So Microsoft Azure is very strong for Microsoft workloads and AI. AWS has its own strengths, but there's still a place in many organizations for on-prem deployments. So thinking about your use case, understanding what are the strengths and limitations of the different platforms is really, really important. And not being kind of in a rush to make one decision because of a sales pitch from a cloud provider, because you can come to regret that later.
Well, I think if we are aiming for a standardization, it's really hard to evade some kind of lock-in to a vendor. Because once we start building things for a specific vendor, even if you have a containerized approach, it's very hard to evade that kind of lock-in. So it's really up to the organization to decide the strategy, because it's also a big investment for you to have a multi-tier, multi-cloud deployment, and to have a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to multi-cloud deployments. The way I see it and the way that we are building it at Saint-Gobain is to be complementary, meaning there are some components, like Phil was saying, that we've decided to go with Microsoft or with GCP, and for others we will maybe decide if we need something that we cannot find in any of the existing cloud providers, we will source it in another cloud provider to make sure, but it's always a complementary thing, meaning we won't be using the same components that we will use in a specific cloud. We won't build this again to deploy it in the different cloud just for the sake of having a multi-cloud approach.
So let's assume we have a small startup who wants to engage with cloud, wants to move to the cloud. And quite rightly, Mahmoud said, we need to specify the requirements. But how does a small organization that find those requirements? Is that something they can learn? Do they have to buy in some consultancy to get that right? Are there any pathways that you can recommend from your experience?
So normally the cloud providers have programs to support startups. There are lots of different programs, and it varies country by country. I participated in a few back in Portugal, where they can sponsor you with some credits, even for exploration. So even if you're not just already building your product, you want to explore, you want to try, and you want to learn. There are some programs that you can use to leverage on that journey, and also some training that is not now easily accessible to any cloud provider, because they know that the learning curve is something that they need to speed up. So you have all the training resources that you will need for starting a new company or for exploring a new cloud deployment. But there are these programs, something that I remember that startups can leverage on.
In my opinion, startups or small companies, they need to get vendor agnostic training, because if they are getting into vendor training, they will see the world from one side. So this limits their scalability for later use, because now maybe it's a startup, 5 people, 10 people, but after maybe 6 months, 1 year, they are running very big, they are scaling too much. So I think getting a consultation for architecture from an independent service provider, not directly from the cloud provider, will be the best fit in this regard.
Okay.
From my perspective, it's because I run a few startups, so I host things in AWS and I host things in Azure. The biggest issue is it's always funded, right? You get credit, you get all of that. It's fantastic, but then how do you utilize this funding for your business to be efficient? you can't use the money that AWS gives you to hire a consultant. So you have to, for startups and founders, you have to learn yourself. Unfortunately, there's no other way unless you saved up, you're using all your mortgage money to run a company, which 99% of the time people won't do. But the key thing I would say, from my experience is, just go on cross-platform training so you understand what's important to your business and what works for your business. So Microsoft will be good for a few things, and then AWS will cater for other specific things. So for banking, for example, where we're running a PSP, we use an AWS because we can actually make it a lot securer. We're getting a lot of credit, a lot of help from AWS, that part. So it's always what works for the business. But sometimes if you have the funding, it's great to hire a consultancy in a consultancy basis where they can actually point you in the right direction, give you a roadmap, what technologies will work for you, and not to, so biggest problem what the startups have is they'll use their funding or their credit on really fancy, expensive servers that your service doesn't even consume. So you're like, wait, I've got this great server, but you're not consuming it. You need something a lot smaller because you haven't got clients, one, and two, the reason why you need a powerful server, or say EC1, EC2 instance, is to provide to your clients. So that's what they need to learn, what the difference is.
So what you just said are kind of usability aspects, user acceptance aspects, and earlier you mentioned trust. Of course, if we use some cloud services from big names, we might trust them, but what about smaller suppliers? Is there anything that we can look out to make sure we can trust them, especially with the background of supply chain security becoming more and more important?
If it was my decision, I would avoid early adopter syndrome. You have new cloud providers that come along. They might be smaller. They might have special capabilities. But usually, if you're one of their first customers, you're going to be the one that gets the friction because they're learning while you're learning. So I think it's really important to be aware of that. But as we were kind of discussing, for anyone, not just necessarily startups, I always think it's really important to do an exploratory phase when you're building something. Create a simple grid of what are the key features or aspects that you're looking for, and then do a proof of concept or a spike to research the different cloud providers, which ones have the different strengths, and then it allows you to have an informed opinion at the end of it, where you've actually researched all of the available options. But it's a good point, perhaps not necessarily to constrain yourself only to the major cloud providers, because there could be one that's smaller, proven, and potentially cheaper that you could look at. So it's good to definitely do your research.
Yeah, one of the use cases that I would see that happening to go for a smaller provider is if you have a sovereignty topics. For instance, in Europe, there are only two cloud providers that I know of that have sovereignty, where they ensure that the data is kept in Europe. So with any global provider, you're not, no one guarantees that your data goes elsewhere. And again, with the context that we are facing right now, that would be a possible use case to go for a smaller provider. In our activity, because we are a global entity and we like to keep things standard for scalability reasons, we would normally standardize in a provider and only go for those specific use cases if we had a real hard to miss use case.
From a tech or solutions perspective, usually you only go for a smaller provider if it's necessary for your business. Like you said, data earlier, right? To protect yourself with GDPR. If you have a lot of secure data and you can't trust it being on the cloud. Yes, AWS provides you a region, or Azure will say, well, you can have it within 10 miles from your office, for example, just using that as an example. But it's all about how you feel and what you trust. So banking today, they still have their own data center. They still store critical data in their own hybrid environment. So they do use AWS for all their stuff, but they don't use it like for, say, things that are very critical. Say in the UK, you have Lloyd's Bank, but they have business in Hong Kong. They'll keep their local data here, but local data in Hong Kong, because they don't want to contaminate the information. And obviously they don't want to risk themselves with GDPR. So data is the biggest thing to stay with a small provider.
Yeah, I think transparency is the key. Availing audit reports from trusted third parties can be providing this kind of trust. But if we are talking from a security point of view, adopting zero trust architecture is essential. Even if you are working with multiple providers, small provider, local, international, I think it's nowadays it's essential. Whether you are the CEO of the company, you are someone in the training department, in HR, intern, zero trust must be adopted so that you can better manage your infrastructure, your data exposure. You make sure that everything is authenticated really, and you have a complete log of all activities. And all of these activities are actively monitored against any anomalies. Thank you.
So in addition to that knowledge, essentially, and the decisions to go for zero trust, are there any requirements for user training, awareness training, apart from those kind of technology-minded people who make the decisions what to use and how to use it?
Sure, it depends on the industry. So if we are talking about financial industry, banking, insurance, etc., we can check the reference architecture. So these companies, organizations can getting the reference architecture to the best practice of this industry so that they implement the needed controls in a way that they can take many of these services from service providers. But as you said, if you are not aware what you are using, then you are not actually using them.
Well, that's true if you're not aware. But a lot of industries actually are not aware what they're using. So they buy products because they have, what's it called, a shiny new thing syndrome. so they just go, oh, well, I went to a conference and I saw this tech. Well, it looks great. So implement it. I want it tomorrow. And you go, well, we haven't got anyone to do it. So what do? You hire a third party. So what happens in the industry today? They have multiple third parties for different products instead of utilizing what they have. So zero trust, actually, it's a good topic, a very good topic, because everyone wants to do this new shiny zero trust infrastructure, but no one will ever get to zero trust. Purely because it's all about working with everyone in the company, whether it's your exec, whether it's your to the mailman at the bottom. So zero trust starts by training your users to actually adapt your technology, and it's not about the technology itself. So
yeah, and I think for me this kind of leads on to the bigger picture. Now I obviously don't know what stage all of you are at in your cloud journey, but it's really important. I think that people are brought on that journey with you. If all of your infrastructure perhaps is all dedicated or on-prem, and maybe you're thinking about a cloud migration, don't make the decisions in an ivory tower. Try to make people part of it and understand what's changing, why, what it will mean to them, because cloud migrations can be massive projects. They can be life-changing in a way because it will completely change people's roles. So it's really important that people understand the journey, what it means to them, how they'll benefit. And so if that's something that you're in the strategic sort of decision-making forum for, then try to engage your employees as early as you can to let them know and to involve them along the way. I think is really important.
Yeah, I think just to complement, we did a few cloud migrations as well, and the training and the education part is key. Especially for the people that are normally managing these applications or this infrastructure. They have a background in managing, for instance, on-prem infrastructure, and now we are proposing a cloud migration program where we migrate through 300 applications to the cloud, and from almost overnight they have to manage a cloud ecosystem, and they don't have any specific knowledge. So training, I think it's part. Also to raise this awareness about cybersecurity and the adoption of the DevSecOps principles, even to the business, or at least to some key business stakeholders that interact normally with the IT world, because they will need to then continue to pass on that knowledge to the business, because if in the end you will be making requests, you need to know what you're asking for, what is possible to do, but you need to make you have to have your business requests in a feasible and transparent way that are easily understandable.
I would just like to make a book recommendation to anyone who's kind of thinking about this. The book that I love is called Accelerate, because it really talks about not just why you move to the cloud, but what it enables you to do when you're able to implement DevOps, DevSecOps principles, genuine agility, being able to fail fast, pivot, make business decisions based on all the benefits that you get. So Accelerate is an incredible book, and I really recommend it.
We've slowly got to come to an end, so I'll give everyone the opportunity to give some final words. But I want to trigger it with a question. We've heard about hybrid systems, and to make cloud work and cloud migration work, which sometimes sounds very easy, a lot of organizations need to include or consider legacy systems that they're still running. And it's amazing how many of those are still around. So if you could try to address what is the future of cloud, and how can we deal with a considerable amount of legacy systems that will need to somehow interoperate in that environment.
Can I jump in with this will be my closing remark. I thought it was incredible that in our company, in JPMorgan Chase, we were able to migrate our 1980s mainframe technologies to the cloud, because we were able to provision virtual machines using an internal private cloud mechanism, so that was able to be done. So you might assume that some things with legacy or heritage technologies aren't possible, but usually there's a way. And what's really nice is that people who are in those teams who are supporting these older systems, they can be part of the change as well. Even if you're a team that's an expert on mainframe, you can be involved in cloud migration. And it was really nice, because we could see that the teams who did that for us felt like they were being brought along with everyone else.
No, I would just recommend, because a part of my experience, it's definitely key if you're starting a cloud migration or thinking of doing a cloud migration, to do an application lifecycle management analysis first on your ecosystem, because there will be hundreds, or it depends on the size of your organization, but at least dozens of applications that don't have an application owner anymore, that are not used anymore. They're just sitting around in the data center, and you are managing those applications, and there's no one using those applications anymore. So you don't need to migrate those. So to give you an example, in a specific project that we did in North America, we've decommissioned 25% of the applications that were part of the goal to migrate, because they were not being used anymore, or they had been replaced during the life cycle of the business, and there was no usage for that thing anymore. So I think that this is key if you're trying to or planning to start on that journey, to look at your current estate, understand what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and then also go for to make this right approach when you're looking at your ecosystem. Does it make sense to rehost this application, to rebuild this application from scratch, to make it cloud ready? Because in some cases it won't be efficient if you migrate it as is to the cloud, because maybe it runs on a very specific VM that you need to pay a big amount of money in the cloud. And if you just rehost it and transform it into a platform as a service application, you don't need if you replatform it, you don't need to pay that much for an application.
I mean, from a security perspective, it's very important to have that kind of looking at what systems you have running and whether they're used anyway, and switch off what you're not using, because they will just pose vulnerabilities in the end.
So the biggest issue we have today is not about legacy product, it's about legacy mindset. So what I mean by that is people are so stuck in old products that they think they use the word impossible quite a lot. And I think in today's age, nothing is impossible. It's about removing the legacy mindset, which comes from the top. People haven't had enough experience or enough training. So any product, I'll use one example. In a recent place, I was doing some consulting, and they were using microfiche, right? And if anyone knows what a microfiche is, that's how they were actually accessing their data. So, this is talk. And when you talk to some of the board members, they're like, "Yeah, it's still a great product." I'm going, it's older than anyone in this building. So this is what we're talking about, legacy mindset. So the legacy mindset keeps the legacy product. So what we need to focus on training the legacy mindset in order for people to actually move and go into the cloud, maybe have that hybrid motion and bring security. So the most insecure environment you have is the legacy mindset you have in your business.
Thank you.
I totally agree with with the point of legacy mindsets. I think that modernization is not a luxury anymore. So legacy mindsets must be like improved somehow, so that the organization can be cloud ready, cloud native ready, maybe, so that they modernize their applications, they redesign the architecture so that they can actually having a modern application infrastructure so that they are up to this era. Otherwise, they will be staying in the past. Thank you.
Excellent. I think you'll all agree we've had some really valuable insights from my panel members. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions from the floor, but I'm sure that the panel will be happy to linger on by the exit here. If you have any questions, do join us there. But we have to move away from the stage for the next speaker to get prepared. So give a big round of applause to everyone, please.